Welcome everyone, my name is Manuel Martinez, and this is another episode of Career Downloads, where each episode I basically hit the refresh button, bring on a different guest to really learn more about their career and the way that they've been able to manage it over time, to really uncover any lessons or ideas that you can use as you're managing your own career. So for today's episode, I'm pretty excited. I have with me Dr. Doreen Galli. We met at Toastmasters, and the conversation has gone well. She had talked a little bit about some of the work that she has done, looked at her profile on LinkedIn. It's very extensive. We've had some conversations since then. There's no way we're going to be able to cover everything she's done, but there are going to be a lot of key lessons just in the short time that we've talked that I think are going to be really insightful and important to cover. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce Dr. Doreen.
Hi.
Nice.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
Good. Thanks for having me. Looking forward. Hope it'll help some people.
And that's ultimately the goal. So if you don't mind, just so as we get started, if you can just tell us what your current role is and just a summary of the roles and responsibilities, and then we'll kind of get in more depth later on.
Okay, sure. So I'm the Chief of Research at TBW Advisors. It's a media company, member of the press, and industry analysts. We publish conference whispers and whisper reports, along with some other document types as well, but those are the heavy ones we drive out of conferences here in Vegas. The exciting part is there's many aspects to it. So one is, yes, I'm at the conferences and acting as a member of the press, as well as a photojournalist. So I have my camera, I take full video of anything and everything I can and I see, and I analyze that, and that's a whole video as well as a document, and ask people questions based upon things that people want to know from the experts at the conference. The other side of it is being an actual expert in technology is when I get to advise people. So it's different than consulting. It's more like, how you went to college and when you were writing your English paper and you're like, okay, I got to keep this GPA up, so I'm going to stop by the English lab. They're very good at this stuff. Let me just bounce it off them, get their sanity check on it. They almost always gave you 1 or 2 points that just made it that much better, right? But then what happens when you get to the professional world, right? Your head of data engineering at your company, who around is more knowledgeable about data, that you can say, can you give me a sanity check on this? I can't know everything. I'm busy with my head down in all of this. I haven't had time to pick up my head to go to talk to all these people and go to all these events and find out about the newest, flashiest things that are going on. The difference is a lot of the big firms, and one of which I was trained at, when they are helping people, they do the same type of thing when they give advice, is they've never been there. So like Stephen A. Smith at NAB on stage talked about how he's the highest paid sports analyst, right? So instead of analyzing tech, he analyzes sports, who was never a pro athlete. And that's like a big thing, because if you haven't been there, done that, but what about technology? Isn't it the same? Why are all these English majors helping these engineers? Their advice is very similar to ChatGPT. That's never had a team of a few thousand engineers. It's never designed software. It's never used an architecture, realized it, lived with it. It's never done any of those things. And all of that context comes through in their advice. And that's actually why I left one of the big firms, is they were giving advice that was absolutely terrible. I would give them recordings of when people listened to the advice from someone who's not been there because a vendor suggested it. And then I would tell them what happened and give them the recordings. It's very common. Analysts record all of our insights because we'll listen to it to pick up more nuances, how we can help the person next time. And they didn't change their advice. They still kept giving the poor advice to people. So from my personal brain's perspective, yeah, that's something you always got to protect, no matter what, is you got to protect your brand. Right. Even in tough environments, you have to find a way to execute and deliver, have something when someone says, what did you do when you were there? That you can say, I did this. Ideally, something they can figure out from the outside. So you would say, this was before and this was after. Remember when this company made this change? Like at Microsoft, remember they had paired regions. Now they have a data boundary. How did that happen? I designed it.
And that's good to know that a lot of kind of what you're doing, which is, I mean, I'm excited to get to that point. I know you and I have talked a little bit offline about it, so that's going to be a fantastic conversation to have around that. So now I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, kind of tell me a little bit more about where you grew up and then eventually kind of what led you down the path towards technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a kid in the Chicago burbs, youngest of 5, grew up predominantly most of my childhood. We lived in a 3-bedroom apartment with 7 people, 5 kids. All 5 of us had 1 bathroom. I had a lot of influence from my siblings in many ways, in terms of I could read and write before I started kindergarten. And I became an all-American runner because I ran with my brother, who was in high school when I was in 2nd grade. So that had a lot of effect on me. But fundamentally, elementary school was pretty much a waste of time. I was at an 8th grade level in 2nd grade, but it was a private school, so they wanted to get all that tuition from my family all those years, and they wouldn't double promote me. So I did a lot of sports.
Interesting.
Yeah.
To kind of keep you busy and entertained. So
I had something in life that was interesting. Yeah. I read every book in the library more than 2 times in my elementary school. So there was like, I was trying to gobble up information like I do now at the conferences, but there was just only so much information to gobble. So
got it.
But there are sports at least.
So, and that kind of leads into the question of, all right, so obviously it came easy for you, at least elementary school.
Yeah.
You know, you're doing sports to kind of keep yourself entertained. When eventually you did move on into, I'm assuming, higher level courses or classes even, is that something that, was it welcome because of the fact that, oh, now this is a challenge? Or was it kind of the opposite? It's like, oh, now I have to do work and I don't like this.
No, not at all. No. I if you've ever seen the movie Short Circuit, it's an AI movie from the 80s, and there's this character of this robot that escaped a military base, and it wanders into the city to meet this quirky lady from the Pacific Northwest. And it goes into a library at one point, and it reads all the books. Can relate to that. And it finishes at the end, and it has his books in his hand, and it looks up, and it says, "More input." That's my spirit animal.
Okay.
It's, if you look at the logo for TBW Advisors, they had no idea that was my spirit animal, but you can kind of see with all the books.
With all the books. Interesting.
Yeah. So no, it was great. It was probably, college was the first time I had some type of challenge.
And then when you decided to go to seek that challenge and go to college, like what was that process like, and what did you think you were going to do for a major?
Yeah, so this is quite funny. I get teased about this from my husband because I was quoted in the local newspaper that he read before we met about how I was going to be an attorney.
Really?
Yeah, so I did math competitions in high school, won the calculus math league in my state and all that kind of stuff. And I had calculus in high school along with tons of AP courses. So when I went to college, I was like, nope, not doing any math. I was doing business.
Okay.
And I was given a choice to take Intro to Computer Science or computer methods or some silly course that business students needed, as opposed to one that would lead to a minor or a major. Given 2 choices, this one opens the door, this one only checks the box. I'll do the one that checks the box and opens the door.
Got it.
Right? So I took an Intro to Computer Science course. We had to write a tic-tac-toe game. This is where the professor kind of called me out. Most people's tic-tac-toe game, it just played tic-tac-toe. Mine asked you your name, both names of the players, kept score, asked you how many games you wanted to play. I mean, well, that's how the games I played were. So, you know,
why am I just going to do a simple tic-tac-toe game when in real life, hey, I'm playing against somebody, we're keeping score. Like, it's that competitive nature that probably came out from doing sports.
Well, it just seemed how you would actually do a tic-tac-toe game. If it just do it and it played one game, but it didn't say your name and didn't say good job, Jane, or good job, Joe. And like, it just seemed incomplete to me. It was kind of obvious to me. And the professor was kind of like, and you're not a computer science major? I mean, it was, yeah. And the math the math department was already after me because they knew I won all these math competitions. And my freshman year, I signed up for this many math classes. Oh yeah, they were livid because they were looking forward to this freshman rock star coming in, right? I had nothing to do with them. So I took the one course and I was like, well, this is kind of fun. So like, well, at least do a minor. I'm like, well, maybe I'll do a dual major. But then I was at a liberal arts school and I'm like, a BA in computer science? That's not good. So I'm like, I need to get a BS, Bachelor of Science, as opposed to a Bachelor of Arts.
Right.
I still had to do all the requirements for the liberal arts degree to BA. So I studied Socrates and Plato and music and philosophy and all those sorts of things you need for a BA. In addition, I had to do everything for a BS. But when I looked at it, I realized you're only a couple courses if you engineered it right. I had all those AP courses, right? So in theory, I could have almost started as a junior. So I was like, well, I can take Intro to Stats for computer science, or I can take statistical methods for the business degree, or I've already had calculus. I could take Stats 1, and it's a requirement for a math major. So I'm like, I'll just take Stats 1. I already had the prereq. So I knocked all those 3 mentions out, and I looked at it, I'm like, wow, I think I can do this. But the problem is, technically, universities limit the loads you can take because they're trying to protect you. And I ran into this first in middle school where they're like, you can't take honors, science, math, and history, and English. And my mom was like, why can't you? Oh, it'd be too much for you. I'm like, no, I think I'll be okay. And I learned not to accept other people's limits on myself. Absolutely not. They don't apply to me. Thanks, I appreciate the warning. You know, my sister-in-law warned me when I went to do my MBA as an adult, don't tell anyone you're working on it, just in case you don't complete it. It's like, seriously? That's just not me.
And it's interesting you mentioned that because I have had a couple different people that have mentioned the same thing. There's almost, again, that limiting belief of, oh, well, it's too much. And I understand that a lot of times they're looking at statistics, they're looking at, on average, this is what it is. But finding a way to communicate and say, okay, this could be a lot, like maybe, like you said, give me a warning, but don't tell me, I don't think you should do that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had the type of personality and luckily through your mom to say, no, we're going to do this. Like one, you knew the capacity to grow, but then I also want to say that, and I probably want to ask it, did you kind of see that as a challenge and say, I'm going to prove you wrong?
I've written a poem called Rebellious Success, so there's always an element of that, but that's just kind of the fun putting on the side. I had no doubt I could do it, but you can't just take an overload. You had to get permission from the registrar. So how do you get the registrar to believe that you're going to sign up for this, which they didn't completely know the full plan when they got permission. I already had it figured out that I needed to do a triple major, right? And that would give me my Bachelor of Science. And so I went, his name was Russell Kennedy at the time, he was our registered Eckerd, and I said, okay, don't get scared, I gotta ask you something important. Here is the permission slip to allow the overload. I promise you, the last day of drop ad, I will bring in a letter from all my professors saying I've maintained my A's. Otherwise, here's the pre-signed drop sheet. And so he's like, you better know what you're doing. And that worked okay until I realized I miscalculated by one course and I needed to do a double overload my junior year and take a course at the community college 2 hours away where my parents were in addition to the overload there. And their finals or their midterms were right after my finals and everything. But I said, well, and he's just get out of here, all cool. You know, so by my junior, senior year, when I had to do the double overload, he's just like, because I was in 17 clubs and committees and an All-American athlete. And I was the only person that had 2 tutoring jobs on campus because 2 departments both wanted me. And the 3rd department, well, you're only allowed 1 of them, and I had 2. Those students would figure out what room I was tutoring on that given day and then show up there and they were last in line. So if I was tutoring math, anyone needing math help got first service. And then anyone who popped in from the computer science department could get help. and then anyone from management after that. But if anyone showed up for whatever the primary I was paid for that day in that lab, they always got to the front of the line.
Got it.
So,
And I like kind of the idea of if you're going to ask for something, it's not just, hey, can I get this exception and be able to do that? But you came ahead of time. You planned ahead. And I think that's a lot of times, it took me a little while to kind of learn that lesson is if I'm going to ask for something, there's a better chance of success if you've done some sort of research or something that proves that not only do I want this request or do I need this, here's the backing behind it or the information that says, hey, I can do that. I've put in more work than just asking for something.
yeah, make it easy to get the yes. I mean, this is true as anywhere in corporate America too, right? If you need to meet with someone, in the invite, this is who I am, this is what I'm working on, who I'm working on it for, and this is what I need you. Make it easy for them to say yes. I had to do that when I did the sabbatical at Microsoft. And as a brand new employee from the outside, I met with 100 plus, maybe several hundred in the first couple months because of all the infiltration throughout the whole Azure engineering I had to get all the information to pull it together. I had to meet with a lot of people,
right.
And I didn't know any of them. And I had to get them all efficiently scheduled, get the information, and get my deliverable done. Same technique, made it easy for them to say yes. That's important.
The other question I had around there is, with you doing so much, there has to be an element of not just efficiency, but even being able to do time management around that. Is that something just because you're taking on so much, you're learning this on the fly and just establishing like, okay, you know what, this time I did too much, maybe next time I'll do less? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, good question. So I've never felt I bit off too much. I don't remember having that feeling, period, in my life. It sounds strange because I bite off a lot. But yeah, no, when I read all those books in elementary school, one of the people I became a fan of was Benjamin Franklin. And one of Benjamin Franklin's many brilliant ideas is he uses time blocks. And I use those to this day. It's in my motivational speech. I talk about them. So time blocks is a way that you can easily get 2 to 3 times the amount of time out of time that would normally, right? And it literally, I don't have to-do lists. If I have something to do, it goes on my calendar. That's how it gets done. Okay. I have to be there to get it done. I have a time block in the morning. Like right now, I have a time block in the morning, and I have a couple things I have to get done overall. But within those little blocks can move. It's kind of like Legos. So I always have to do my meal prep before I get going with the day. I work out, and I have to shower. Just to clean up for the day, right? Cleanup has to be after the workout.
Yeah. You don't want to do that beforehand.
Yeah, right? But that's the only order constraint. When I do my meal prep, I can do some of it before the workout, some of it after. I can do it completely after the workout in the shower, right? So that can move around just so it gets done in the morning. And that's something that I do all the time. Sometimes I'll have a time block when it was supposed to be intense analysis. And maybe I'm not quite in the mood for it. But there's this time block tomorrow when I was going to do some catch up on, I got to do your shorts, do your, work on your A/B testing, any of that. And I'll go, you know what? I'm switching these 2 days because I'm more in the mood for this today and that tomorrow. So I everything is, even my vegging, even my relaxation, I schedule that. It's like, I'm not going to accidentally be on the couch and, oh my God, 2 hours went by. I'm going to be, you know what? I'm going to relax now. Get on the couch. And I own it. I like to completely own what I'm doing.
Right.
Even relaxing.
And that method of time blocking, and just for some that may not be aware, so I've heard it, I've tried to implement it. I haven't always been successful. So then I'm assuming the title of the meeting or whatever you're blocking is designed for, like you said, when I set that time block, it says meal prep. When I set this one, it's deep analysis. And you're just specifying a certain amount of time, and even doing the relaxation part. Are you at the beginning of the day looking at, here's everything I have to do for that day? Or even as the day goes on, do you have the flexibility to kind of move things around? I'm just,
Yeah, great
it's something
question.
I want to learn to do, and it sounds like a perfect place.
I tend to have one day a week that is completely non-blocked.
Okay.
Or you can have 2 half days. I like non-blocked time. The last hour of every day, like from a work perspective, the 4 to 5 p.m., never blocked till that day in case there's an emergency. Right? So you have that flexible dynamicism to book it in. There's also, you need to be kind and flexible, but still kind of like, what do I have to get done, and being realistic? This is going to take so long. And sometimes time opens up. And so then you look on your calendar like, here's a 15-minute when you grab, and you're like, oh, got it off, just opened up. So my goal always is to open up the biggest buckets of time I can. It's kind of like a video game of time, right? So if I can get my meditation done the same time maybe I'm doing a red light treatment, that's cool. I don't have to take 2 separate time blocks to do my red light treatment and my meditation. So that's always a win when you could do it. But the whole goal always is to open up the largest blocks of time. And it's not that I'm not comfortable with flexibility or dynamicism, but by the more scheduled I have things, the more flexibility I actually achieve.
Right. No, and that makes sense because it's the idea of the more efficient you are, the less you kind of have to do, and you have that flexibility. So I think about when I relate to that, it's at work. I can do, when I first started getting into kind of like scripting, is I can do these manual tasks. I can click on it. Or if this is going to take me an hour, if I can spend additional time and automate that and bring that hour down to 15 minutes, well, now I have another 45 minutes to, maybe learn more about scripting, or maybe I pick up another skill. And it's really just understanding how to be more efficient with the time that you're using to, again, it gives you more flexibility, but you're not 100% rigid where, okay, from this time to this time, and I have to continue doing whatever amount of work.
It should never feel horrible. I'm very much in life generally with doing things that explicitly just feel like you're forcing yourself to. I say generally, I'm a distance runner, and anyone who knows anything about distance running, especially whenever you're out there trying to do a great pace, it absolutely is horrible. It doesn't matter if you're in shape or not, but but that's kind of the fun. It builds your grit.
Got it.
I can't have enough grit. So but the running is when I build my grit. The rest of life, I like to you want it flexible and dynamic, but you still, when you plan it and you're like, okay, I can do this then, this then, this then, you'd be surprised how much you can get done in a little amount of time.
Right. Okay. So I know I took a little bit of a detour here, but now through all this efficiency and everything that you're doing, you end up finishing with a triple major then, and kind of what's the next steps that happen from there?
Yeah, so I was able to get a Rotary Foundation scholarship, so I was a Goodwill Ambassador to Canada. I actually worked with Rotary all through high school and college. So I was like the top Interact president in high school, and I founded the Rotary Club at my college, as well as helped several colleges around town, or around that part of the state form Rotary clubs. So I did a lot of work with Rotary.
And Rotary is?
An international services organization. Okay. Their original mission way back when I was with them, it was before 2000, obviously, because I'm slightly older, so was to rid the world of polio before 2000. And they get vaccines to people all over the world, but they also do these Rotary Foundation fellowships where they exchange students to other parts of the world. So my master's degree at Waterloo was paid for by Rotary. However, their scholarship is for an academic year, which they generally think is 9 months. And Waterloo's academic year is 12 months, which means I could complete my master's. So I was like, score. And there's a little confusion on that. So I had to show them the details of what they said they were doing and the details of how that college implemented it. And I didn't quite save up enough to be able to handle my car payments and everything 12 months past the 9. And so they covered the 12 months when they realized they needed to, not just 9 months, because I had a backup school just in case this all blew up. And then they also allowed me to work on campus.
Nice.
So that was a lot of fun.
And then now through Rotary you're going, and obviously you continue your education and you're...
Yeah, not just any school though. There was a 2% acceptance rate. And one of the reasons not only my triple major I got in was because I had a full ride. It makes it easy for them to say yes, because what's the risk from their part? I was 100% paid for. I was a free customer.
Got it.
So that being a free customer helped get into a 2% acceptance rate school.
Nice.
Yeah, it was incredible. Oh my gosh. They had 5,000 students in the entire math faculty. My undergrad school, the entire campus was 1,200.
So that's a big difference there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And a lot of this work that you're doing, with this organization and building, sounds like you're building a personal brand, and then also you're building relationships. And when I say personal brand, it's people are starting to know who Doreen is. Mm-hmm. Oh, obviously, you talked about the tutoring. So people are coming through and, we're going to find out, right? Yep. Word is spreading about who you are, yep. What the quality
sometimes
of
too fast. Kidding. When I was in high school, I was so well known in my hometown that I couldn't go on a date without someone I had no idea who they were walking up to me and going, "Oh, hi, you must be Doreen," because I was on the front page of the sports section and everything else. So, yeah,
it's got its drawbacks.
It was actually more burdensome as a bit. So when I went to Canada, it was kind of nice because people didn't know me, so I could go out somewhere and socialize, and somebody wouldn't walk up to me and go, "You're Doreen."
So then, from that organization, what led you towards your first, I guess, we'll say, professional job, like corporate position? And then what was that like, kind of getting your foot in the door in that realm?
Great question. So when I was writing up my thesis, I sometimes, when I'm writing, like to change environments. When you change environments, it changes your view. So if you write something, go with your computer or a printout to a different seat, different room, and read it again. You will see and pick up different things. So I was writing out my thesis, went to Toronto. I had friends in Toronto. My friend worked at IBM. Went to visit my friend for lunch at IBM. Had my backpack with all the stuff in it, right? Knew I was planning on finish by fall. Of course, had a copy of my resume on me, right? Ran into their manager. IBM managers are trained to always be recruiting.
Interesting.
What are you doing when you finish? Right? Don't know. Right? I had guaranteed funding for 3 years. I finished it in residency, so didn't know. Worst case scenario, I could hang out at the university. I had guaranteed funding, and my visa was good till the end of the year. Then I'd have to get a new one, but I still had guaranteed funding. So if I maybe didn't turn it in, I could drag it out if I wanted to. And so they took my resume, and I had an interview the next day to find out what it might like, and they were talking about various different opportunities, possibilities, and there's this one thing they were starting called the Center for Advanced Studies. It was meant to get technology advancements from all the research they fund at all these universities and all the research they fund at their software labs, get them together, but get it to product immediately to customers. Okay. It was called the Consortium of Research and Distributed Systems. And I'm like, they brought up different opportunities. I'm like, yeah, kind of like this group. That sounds interesting. So it was the first postdoc in the history of IBM's Center for Advanced Studies. They now have 35 centers around the world. And they were debating about canceling the center at the time because they didn't have any project successful.
And what was it that attracted you to that particular position? So to me, it seems like the fact that it's, like you're helping develop, it's the creative aspect of how do we develop something and then eventually make it to product. Was that it?
It was the bleeding edge on top of getting into customers and all of that. On top of that, okay, the people on this project, check this out. Paul Larson, the father of SQL. Wahini Media and Toby Torrey, the people behind X500 and the directory services standards. Ivy Silvershots, if you've had an operating systems course in undergrad, chances are he wrote your book. Yeah, these are the people I got to work with directly. As a matter of fact, I was the architect for the project that had to get all these people to listen and collaborate to deliver something, and they were failing miserably. Yeah. So I had to rescue the project basically as this new PhD, right? Yeah.
And that has to be a bit of a challenge. So I'm curious how you handled, one, I don't know at that time, probably more from like an age standard, right? Because you're the new person, you're younger.
I was 25 when I finished.
25 and having to go ahead and gather these people, and now you're starting from scratch as far as who Doreen is, right? So sure, they see they can look at the resume, they can look at all this, but okay, why should we listen to her? What is it that she's going to bring about?
Yeah, no, it was interesting. It was there's two aspects. One is IBM had a dress code at the time, but it didn't apply to me. Let's just say that, right? I had my Doc Martens, my biker jacket, my jeans on. They were suit and tie, right? We're gonna laugh, But like it was John Thompson and John Schwartz, very famous in IT and technology. Oh yeah, those John Thompson and John Schwartz. And I remember the team freaked out when I landed up in the elevator with John Schwartz once with my biker jacket and my Doc Martens and blue jeans. And he's just like, he looked and he's like, oh, you're Doreen. So they knew I was the person that was hopefully going to somehow pull this off. That's been the landmark of my career. When you're like, what are we going to do? This is about to fail epically. That's usually when people are very open-minded and in terms of, okay, who can actually get this done? And I've always been a great candidate for that. That's the stuff I pull off. That's my reputation. Is I like to go in there when it's like, we're about to cancel this. We have millions into this project, into the Center for Advanced Studies, into Chord's project. We need something to show for it or forget it. And these people were very well known. And I'm, like I said, the shiny new PhD student. I learned that even if you're a type A in that scenario, you can't be a type A. You have to be, it's the same thing I did at Microsoft, bringing everything together, the same skill set. It's, I'm just trying to get this together. I understand you know what you're working on. Tell me what you're doing. I'm all ears. So I was all ears with them. But sometimes, the difficulty in that, the two components wouldn't integrate because they were using 16-bit grayscale and they're using 8-bit color. You're going to have to put something in the middle, right? I didn't need a PhD to know that. But that was a lot of it. And the good news was for the big CastCon in October, the first ever CastCon, they just had their 30-something celebration. It was in LinkedIn. The night before the event, the same night, the Toronto Blue Jays won the World Series. And yes, it was in Toronto. Everyone was cheering, yes! Is when we got the final components integrated for the conference the next day.
Wow.
So we came home from getting everything integrated. Everyone is cheering on the streets. It was amazing. It had nothing to do with our accomplishment, but to this day, it felt like it. Because it was the proof of concept for WebSphere.
Right, and it feels memorable, and it's easy to remember now. Not that you wouldn't have remembered it either without the World Series, but again, that just kind of coincides. It makes it just a little bit more impactful.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it was exceptionally exciting. It was, yeah.
So one of the things that you kind of brushed on, and there's a lot of this. I see a lot of this on LinkedIn and just in general. You came into a corporate environment, and I understand that part of it is, you have the skill set. You've developed that behind you to be able to say, I can do this. But you remained at that time yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's corporate America, that suits, ties. Like you could have gone in to try to fit in a little bit towards the mold. Again, maybe not completely go suit and tie.
For the conference I did. They were very worried for the conference when I had to present to you can't go like this. I'm like, I actually have suits. They're like, you have suits? I'm like, yeah. So I had wore suits the whole time at the conference when they wanted me to publicly represent them.
But like in that environment, obviously you kind of got the okay to get away from the dress code. What made you have that confidence to say, I can remain me, but still be able to do this?
Have you ever seen the movie Real Genius?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's really just being comfortable with the fact that I know what I'm doing, and regardless of what's going on,
I did a minimum residency PhD at Waterloo, so they figured she's going to figure out how to get this too. And I somehow was able to give them that belief in me, and they were seeing the progress, and we did it. So proof's in the pudding.
Right, exactly. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, you get this integration, you're able to do all this, and how long did you stay there, and what else did you accomplish?
It was a year appointment. I was a foreigner on visas.
Okay.
On a postdoc. And so it's like, okay, where do I go from here? And PhD, you're like, apply for professorships. In the meantime, in January that year, my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer down in Florida. So kind of was interested in finding a way back. However, also in 1993 was the first year IBM ever had layoffs. The question was, are you going to become a Canadian and landed immigrant? I'm American. No, I was on year-by-year visas. I still have my Florida driver's license. Which, if you went to IBM Canada now, anywhere else, when they're having the first layoffs in the history of the company, you can't hire someone new and bring them in, even if they already did that for you. So that became a non-option. Unless I was going to change my citizenship. Yeah. But I was able to get, and it was selected because it was forgot the county, but it was the remote branch of Georgia Tech. And they were heavy in working professionals, and I was able to get an associate professorship. So not an assistant, but an associate, leveraging all my industry experience and the degrees. They're like, no, she's amazing. They put me right in as an associate. So, and at the time, my father had cancer, and then of course my husband was in South Florida. So we eventually, I leveraged that opportunity to start my family. So I actually jumped out of industry and jumped back in.
Wow. And what starting the family, did you encounter any kind of challenges? So I've only had one other person that took, from what I remember, actually I've had two people that have kind of taken multiple years off and then kind of coming back. So I don't know.
Yeah, I technically wasn't off because I was working as a professor, an associate professor at that. And I was consulting. I wrote my book on distributed systems at the time. So I was still doing things.
Okay.
Fortunately, the guy that brought the Olympics to Atlanta, and I had volunteered with the Olympics. It was an IBM thing. That technically was an unpaid job. But because of that, I made the contacts so that when my son was able to, after he was 2 and went to, was more freedoms, he'd go to school and such, that the guy who brought the Olympics to Atlanta was on the board of directors of the telco company I joined. And they had a big mess, went public. They had to figure out how to stabilize this because people were complaining. Now that they're public, it has to be clean and stable, and they were making live changes to a 24. So it's one of those cases to where it was a big mess and they needed someone who absolutely could we need it fixed, period. So that has my name all over it, right?
Yeah, it definitely does, especially based on what you're doing in the past. And then also, now I'm seeing a little bit more of a theme is, apart from just doing a good job at your role, you seem to volunteer and kind of help out and make connections. But again, I've brought this up in the past, you're not doing it to meet people this person's going to get me a job in the future. It just happens because they probably thought of you, and he was like, oh, I remember Doreen, we worked on something completely different. This is related to the Olympics, but now we have this problem. So people start to, when they're thinking through, they're like, okay, who's dealt with this type of situation? It may not have even been tech related. It could have been, again, with the Olympics, just some sort of issue there, helping plan that out. Is that accurate?
Yes, and one piece of advice I received, which was very important, it does not matter who you know. It matters who knows what you know. So I'm very happy you're helping get the word out there. Right? I mean, because that was a telco company. What have I done in telco before that? I knew networking, of course, but technically, even when I got my CIO job in a global Fortune 10 as the CIO and CTO in the biggest logistics company in the world at the time, I hadn't been in logistics before.
And that's comes back to, and I had a previous guest, her name is Estella, where she talks about transferable skills, right? And that's, in that sense, it's a different industry, but there's skills that you can bring across. Like you mentioned, networking. Okay, it's not quite telco, but there is that similarity in how they operate.
Yeah, there's not a technology that I'm not comfortable in, so that's kind of a convenient thing. And I'm perfectly comfortable in business or technology, but there always has to be that geek element to it. But Absolutely. The interesting thing is, fundamentally, that job was because I was confident that I'm like, I don't know what it's going to take to solve this, but I got a great toolbox. But I never reuse a plan. You can't reuse a plan. People reuse plans in consulting all the time, and it's a disaster because every organization is too unique to completely, you can be inspired by that plan, but to completely reuse it? No.
And then in that role, again, just based on conversations, this one, the track record, you helped implement and do what you were hired on to do there at that telco company.
Yeah, they had bought, at the telco company, they didn't have significant quality and testing before they released. They didn't have release control. It was all just, hey Joe requests going out. There was no product planning or anything. It was just someone would have an idea, they go to an engineer, suddenly it appeared in the product. And so they really had to mature. The technology didn't exist to do backups of websites, especially a functioning website, because we had, if you're familiar with like Google Voice, but this was in 98, right? It was one voice number. You can fax me, page me, email me. You can go to my website associated with my phone number and fax me, email, and page me from there, or on your phone. Originally, it was you could do one of 5 standardized requests, but I knew the two systems were connected. And I'm like, how would you like to be able to do an audio attachment reply to an email that was read to you? It got our CEO 5 minutes on CNBC.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you know all the components together, you can put them together and go, now wait a second, here's an easy win. It was a day of engineering is being generous, the amount of time it took to accomplish it technically, because we already have the systems connected. Like the voicemail system and the phone system and the internet and the web, all of that was connected already, and all of the transfer up and back between the standards, it was all there. You just had to say, do it.
And it's really just making sure that you're understanding fundamentally how different technologies work, how these different systems integrate, and then just, to your point, not having something pre-built and taking a step back. Because I've had that a lot of times. We're too involved in too close to the situation. As soon as you kind of take a step back and you're like, okay, well, this works this way, this works that way. Well, it can do a little bit more and maybe add additional functionality just by adding something else.
Yeah. I call it a low-lying fruit, which I used to refer to as watermelons, but watermelons at Microsoft were big problems that you thought was green. It was a big red on the side. I like watermelons for nice, big, juicy, low-lying fruit. So only if you use it as low-lying, easy fruit, then it's a watermelon.
Then it's a watermelon.
Yeah.
And now, I don't know that I kind of need to get going into like the next consecutive role, but really, from a lot of the places that you've kind of worked at, right? You mentioned Microsoft. Again, as you're moving to these different roles, is it similar to the last one? Are there layoffs happening? Like, what is it that kind of, if you kind of look at the overall theme, how are you able to move around through these different positions? Because one thing that, and I meant to talk about at the beginning, is you've had a number of significant roles, and some of them I saw that you moved up, some you came in, CIO, CTO. So these aren't just, like I'm an engineer here, I do this. These are high visibility roles. So what was kind of the process, and what made you, I guess, was it skill set? Was it a desire to move into those types of positions?
Great question. Interestingly, not at all. I love solving problems, right? I need to get paid enough to live, but my son, when he was 2, was anaphylactic to 10 major foods. So I always had to custom make all of his foods. And the one thing you can't do at the level when it's not easily outsourced, we outsourced it once for a vacation to Disney, and it took so many hours to set up, it wasn't even funny because it's a life or death thing. Right. So my constraints were always, for my own medical reasons, had to be in a warm climate because I could not predominantly live in a cold climate, and life had to be achievable, my constraints in life, based upon what the company needed. And I don't think a lot of people have any clue how tough that is, particularly when you get up into more senior positions, which is the only place that great problems exist.
Right.
So for me, it's always been, how do you balance that? But I'm also a change agent. And a lot of times when you come in and you execute the change and you finish executing the change, they're like, okay, we can see the end is all set up. Then you tend to get laid off. Yeah. It's like, we're good, we can go now, because you came in to do the change. So you always want to make sure you're taken care of up front correctly, because chances are, once you've done so much change, like at Microsoft, once I designed everything, they were still absorbing it for years afterwards.
Right.
And so that's just, I don't know, that's just part of it. It's never personal. It's part of the technology industry. And like, okay.
And it sounds like it probably fit your personality a little bit more, is understanding that I want that next change or that next challenge. So
I would have been happy if any of them, if I had, because I know what the next challenge is. They just didn't have the ability to know what the next challenge was, and we didn't get to have that conversation yet because it was just coming up, and it would have been too premature to truly list where we could have gone next. So there's more vision I had that they could have done, but that's okay.
It's part of,
like AT&T, they bought Warner Brothers. They needed the money. It wasn't anything personal. It's just, okay. And those 5 years, I was working on something beautiful, but oh well. That's why you have to make sure you deliver, because as soon as it is not business convenient, particularly in the tech field, you're gone. It's not a relationship. It's not a marriage. As much as I'd like to think so, and a lot of people like to think, and it feels good to want, there's no relationship between the company and you. I don't care if you've been there 20 years. I don't know how to tell you this. They're out for their bottom line. And the one moment that's their best interest, even if in the big picture it might not be, they don't act that way. You will be gone. And a lot of people get shocked when it's happened, or take it personal. And traditionally they try to make it personal, and then they realize, no, it's just a business decision. And I don't know where they're floating now trying to make it personal. It's as personal as it could get. It just is how the industry is. So that's why you have to make sure you execute, you network. And you had brought this up with how you networking. And I said it was important. Who knows what you know? But there's another aspect to those other activities. And this was advice I got early in my career. Okay, so companies have ups and downs. If your whole life is your job and your family, but it's only your job and your family, the ups and downs of the business will affect your whole life. So add something like Toastmasters in, and you always have something else feeding in good energy and good whatever. And that way it's like, okay, this part's a little less than positive, a little less than ideal, but that's okay. I have this bringing in my good energy now. I can balance that this is a little turmoil. They're laying everyone off every 90 days, reorganize every 90 days. That will not affect you as much if you have the rest of your life satisfactory.
I never thought about it that way, in the fact that that's really what it's doing, because there were points in my career where it was work and family.
Yeah.
And as much as we like to think that they're separate, they're really not. Like, if work was going great, guess what? You have that energy. I bring that at home. And when it wasn't going great, guess what? I brought that home. Luckily, I have my wife who's she's very keen to this, very supportive, and she knows that I need that. She was like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I know there's something at work. I'm like, well, how? She's like, because you're bringing that home.
Yep.
Right. The more I started to try to get involved in other things outside of work, maybe it was sports, maybe it's different activities, volunteering, things that you're like, I enjoy this. Okay, to your point, it becomes less of a seesaw, and now more of like a balancing ball, where you're on there like, okay, this is going down, but there's enough over here to bring me up, and it's a constant movement.
And the fact that brought you up affects you at the workplace, where everyone else is down in the gutter, and you're like, no, we got this. And like, wow, that man, he's got some positive energy. Makes the difference. Yeah,
it does. And I've become that person. I'm always like, hey, how's it going? Like, because there's so much that I'm like, everything.
Happy Friday.
Happy
Monday.
Everything's good.
Yeah, happy Tuesday.
Sure. There's times where, again, for moments, I'm like, oh man, and they can tell like, I'm really struggling with this part of it, but I don't become an instant downer for everything.
Right. It doesn't magnify it either. It stops the wheel from cascading.
Having these other things that you're doing outside of work, is that something that you discovered after, or was it consciously something that you're like, hey, I'm figuring this out as I go, or you're just, after you reflect back, be like, hey, this is something I've learned?
You heard the beginning of that, elementary school. How do you tolerate an elementary school where they force you to be there every day, all year? For 8 years, I performed at an 8th grade level in the beginning of 2nd grade. And yet I had to endure it.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's just developing that grit from that early age on.
So I learned that, well, this doesn't, but I got sports. So I got a good book to read. I can write a great poem, right? So yeah, I had to find ways to, I've never been bored, by the way. I always found boredom to be a self-reflective state. Never been in my life.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you've done things at Microsoft, you've done things at all these different places. What are some of the biggest challenges that you think that you've had to overcome, throughout that part? So, I hear a lot of great things that you've done. Sure, there was some of the layoffs, but there's, for as extensive as the career as you've had, I would be naive to think that there weren't challenges along the way.
Oh yeah, lots of challenges. I remember Nancy at IBM said, when you first get on the phone with someone, you have to earn the right to say something.
That's interesting.
You've never met them before, whatever, so I don't always, I used to immediately get on the phone. Hi, I'm this. I don't aggressively get down to business as fast anymore. I will do some niceties and say, I saw you're working on it, make it about them and what they're working on, and then do it. The good news is Nancy took 3 reschedules before I actually had my first meeting with her. After my first meeting with her, I could get in the meeting anytime within 2 weeks. That was the standard at IBM, if you're respected. If you're respected, you should be able to get on anyone's calendar within 2 weeks. If you don't know what you're doing with your calendar. And that assumes travel, otherwise it should be within a week, executive to executive, right? If it's past 2 weeks and they weren't out of town, they don't really care about meeting with you.
And is it really just them understanding, again, the nicety's not going straight to business because, again, it's just like, is it because you're overwhelming them right at the get-go, or what was that?
They're humans. They're people. They're having a crazy day. Maybe their part of the world is going horrible. So first allowing it, and sometimes I've gotten into a meeting where you could tell everyone's just like, whatever, I'm like, I don't know about you, but it's one of those days, and I'll pretend I'm having one of those days. Let's just do a big deep breath and then we can dive in. Okay, now I feel better.
So it's that emotion. So really
it's getting that connection, that human connection, acknowledging them as a human and doing that first. Maybe that might be more obvious to other people, but
well, it might be and it might not, right? Because a lot of times
you don't want to waste their time.
You don't want to waste their time, so you want to have, it's a skill that you're going to have to learn to develop. It's that emotional intelligence, it's understanding, read the room. Now it's hard when you're on the phone, but again, taking a minute to try and go through and really understand what's going on, and
being present
and not going straight in with your agenda, like you mentioned before, with a plan. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to
run over,
and I'm sure with executives that at one point
that's a China in a bowl shop approach. Doesn't work.
Well, not only that, but you don't want to waste their time. So I can understand There's times where I've done that where I'm like, okay, I understand they have a limited amount of time. Let me get straight to business. There's a difference between, again, charging right in and taking a second, but then being efficient with the time and respectful.
Yes, it's a balancing act. And it depends on the person too. And sometimes, for example, you'd get on the phone with an executive. And I would call it how chickens in a coop, and they go around and go, look at my feathers, aren't they pretty? A lot of senior executives very much like to do that. And what you want to do is go, absolutely, those feathers are so beautiful. Wow, I can only help to have such beautiful feathers. And by giving them so much respect for the feathers that they are showing you and flopping, they think you're pretty impressive because you think they're great.
I've read some of those books where it talks about, again, make it about them. Mm-hmm. Even just at networking, it's taking the time to ask about them and knowing something about them. Oh man, Doreen's amazing. She's just an awesome person. all you probably did was ask me about me. But you're going to stand out because it's not the norm. And it sounds like you do a lot.
Right. And I didn't challenge them for flocking their feathers and showing how beautiful they were. Instead, I admired them. Because a lot of times I do a lot of change management. And a lot of times you get on the call, fundamentally, they have a magic card behind their pocket. Like when I changed the commission structure at IBM, that person had a magic card in his pocket that is never used. He had the power to change the structure. I had to have a conversation with him and get him to think that this was his idea and a brilliant idea, right? Because we did the patent program for global services. They only had 15 filings the year before, and I brought it from research and software over to services. But the problem was, it was embedded in the assets, that the assets people weren't charging for, they were giving them away.
Okay.
And the reason they were giving them away is if they had a $1 million contract and a $200,000 asset, they would only pay the salespeople on the $1 million contract, not the $200,000 asset. The problem is the asset was 100% profit. In addition to the fact they're still being charged time and materials for any adaptation for the asset. So I presented this problem to it. I'm like, what can we do? This seems silly because I want them to do more of that, but they're not selling this thing that's 100% profitability. They're giving it away. Now, I had embedded patents, so I had the carrot or the stick. The stick was the patent attorneys I could have gone after to stop that from happening, but I was hoping to get the commission structure changed. And I'm like, we could do a program, but that's short term. What can we possibly do? Right? Talking to the person that changes the commission structure, right? No idea what could possibly happen, right? We could put a multiplier on it for that part of the sale. Really? So now the $1 million contract with a free $200,000 asset was being sold for $1.2 million because the person that sold the $1.2 million contract was getting paid as if it was $1.4 instead of the $1 million before he made the change. Now, those salespeople, client-facing, were running to all my engineers going, you got more of these assets? But how do you get the person to change the commission structure and change? That was his magic card. So I had to figure out, just like Russell and allowing me to do an overload in college, how do you get them to use the power they possess? How can you make it comfortable and easy and within their power and knowledge for them to go, this is what I'm going to do, and to take that step? That's the art form.
And it's the art form because it sounds like as much as you could have gone through and challenged them, right? Like, hey, here's what I've done. Here's the reason. You took the ego out of it, right? Like at the end of the day, you're trying to solve the problem. Me having an ego and going through and challenge you isn't going to. Maybe it will make that change, but it's going to be a long, hard one. More often than not, it's not going to happen. But understanding that, okay, I have to know that in order for this to be successful, I've got to take myself.
Yeah, a bull in a china shop can't actually do great change management. And a lot of people don't realize that, and they will hire the bull in the china shop. If you know what I'm talking about. If you put a big bull on top of it, it's just broken glass everywhere. You want to execute smoothly and just, I could do it. It was like a month later, the commission structure was changed. Wow. It was really easy. Yeah.
So as you've kind of gotten into all of these roles, at some point, and I know we kind of touched that in the beginning, so I kind of want to transition towards that part of it, is you've done all these great things in different areas, different industries. I'm going to make sure that I link have a link to your LinkedIn so that people can go and look and probably reach out to you if they have additional questions.
I'm native in every industry, technically.
Yes. I saw it. You name it. I was like, oh my God. These are names like, DHL, AT&T, Microsoft. So again, there's a lot of that. And at some point, you touched on it a little bit at the beginning, is you kind of moved into more of a consulting role and doing that. So what ultimately, apart from what you already mentioned, is you didn't like that the way that it was being handled? Was that the primary driver?
Yeah, so I'm technically an analyst. Consultants will go offline for weeks at a time. Those weeks at a time, I'm several hundred conversations or several conferences ahead in new information I've acquired in terms of what's going on.
Okay.
Right? But the interesting thing is my entire career, I have rotated between advisory, somewhat of consulting, or an operations role. So I'm used to being in all three, right? And I wear every hat in every role I'm at. So when I'm an operations executive and I'm negotiating with IBM for my services, I know how their contracts operate. So I was able to get 30% off my contract because I was like, oh, your bid came above my signature authority. Oops. But we can get it done. If you can start next week, if you got the bench time, let's do it. If you can do it. And they're like, heck yeah, I got all of it off my contract and we started Monday, you know? So every hat I've ever worn, I've learned something about that perspective that I bring in to the other perspectives. And so every position, I'm always wearing every hat. And that affects everything you do because you sit in their chair. You can't help it. I've been in that chair. But I've rotated regularly. Like even I was doing analyst work. The pandemic hit. I went on a sabbatical and I was in the ops deep engineering role, right? Finished executing everything. So it got to where, you know, they gave me 4 months of work. I finished in 4 weeks and they're like, I can't help it. Of course, I'm going to do it as efficiently and amazing as I can. I'm not going to take 4 months for the sake of dragging it out. So I laid off. Oops, but that's okay. You know, so rotated back to advising again. But I've always done this rotation up and back, which really helped my knowledge set. But it does confuse a lot of people because I don't fit in a box, which makes it difficult also finding amazing roles because, you know, AI picks out average, ordinary.
Right.
And that's what they're using nowadays. So yeah, it doesn't go for outliers by the way the mathematics underlying works. It wouldn't.
It wouldn't, yeah, because, I mean, to your point, you're not going to fall within that realm.
I know. It's just how it is, you know, and it's okay. But I'll still run into people today. I had a conversation with someone who was convinced that their cloud engineers were more technical than me. I'm like, that's hilarious. Well, I don't have cloud certifications, but I'm a member of the press. And as a member of the press, when you take certifications, you're becoming inundated with their bias, right? And I explained this when I was talking to the team at Microsoft. You know, I'm sorry. Yes, I know AWS inside out. I know Google inside out. I know Azure inside and out. But I don't have the certifications because as a member of the press, that creates bias. If you want me to, while I'm in your operations role, no big deal. That's kind of knowledge acquisition and passing tests is kind of like my thing. No big deal. And their answer was, we're asking to define the next generation, so who would test you? But some people assume, since I don't have cloud certifications, that I'm not a cloud engineer.
Right.
Which I just find comical, you know, but.
And that's got to be that's got to be quite a big challenge.
If someone refuses to see your capabilities, you can't change their mind. You just work with people who understand what you bring to the table and don't waste your time. That's what I do.
Got it.
You know,
and that's something that
they'll eventually figure out. Even like when I'm worshiping how beautiful their feathers are that they're flocking, if they don't figure out who and what I am, it doesn't matter. It's nothing to do with the meeting. It's about getting the goal done. And, you know, if they're so incapable of understanding or not willing to, because a basic sentence that you were the platform architect for Azure, anyone who actually listened to that sentence would never say you're not a cloud engineer. Like, that's just the most absurd thing, right? No, it means you're one of the top cloud engineers in the universe. You know, there's only 3 major public clouds. I was for one of them during a major transformation, right? But yeah, don't worry about it. And I think that's important advice. You know, you can't please everybody. They're not going to like everybody. If for some reason they just have a thing, just don't feed into it. Just move on. You know, don't let it ruin your day. No one can make you feel bad without your permission. Is a very important lesson.
I mean, it really is. And now as you're kind of talking about, I know we had talked about this before, with you developing the platform, right? So having those types of challenges, I know how we do it as an individual, right? It's just, you touched on it, is really don't feed into that. But how would someone, what would be your advice for somebody like me? It says, okay, I don't know if I want to take the certifications, or, hey, maybe I don't want to check that box. I don't have the restriction of a media press. One of the things I see a lot now is build publicly, right? Do things out there so that people are aware and talk about it. Now, it might be hard because we're like, well, you're talking about that, you're posting about it. Did AI do that? Did you do that? But there's
and you
ways
can't
to
always talk
demonstrate
about
that.
what you did.
Right.
A lot of what I did at Microsoft still can't talk about.
Exactly.
I talk generically.
But how would I go about, or how do you go about, I guess would be a better question, is relaying that to somebody who is willing to listen.
That's where it's important who knows what you know. And then hopefully one of those people runs into someone who's looking for you. The person who got me the recruiter who placed me for my global Fortune 10 before 40 role, turned me down for the first thing I wanted to do with him. Didn't burn the bridge. I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of bummed. I thought that was kind of fun. It is a really cool role he was working on. You're like, okay, but he knew what I was capable of, right? Lo and behold, he ran into someone that was looking for me and called me. And so it's why it matters who knows what you know and what you're capable of, so that when someone runs into anyone who has one of those that, like in my case, what are we going to do? We have to get this done for our business to survive. Yeah. Call me, please. Call me. Love to help you. Yeah, no, because when it really has to get done, you have that. That's huge, because it's about the company's survival. And so everyone looks at it through their own tiers. And when you're doing one of these massive change managements and you have to talk to people with different dimensions, each dimension has a different conversation because it's tailored to their dimension of this huge problem. So some of the people that worked with me when I was going through this, one of the lessons they would say, they go, okay, we just had 3 conversations with 3 different people and they were completely different conversations. And I said, well, they were different angles of the same conversation and they thought about it. Because the person who had this interface with the problem has a completely different agenda. So I had to tailor what was important about the big ball relative to their specific agenda.
And how did you pick that up over time to be able to understand and know the different levels of communication? I know that you're a part of Toastmasters, and that's just being able to go ahead and with presence, but that's completely different than understanding how to talk to somebody at different levels and within different purviews.
Right. Good question. Part of it might have been naivety when I was young, that I didn't know. I knew to be humble when you speak with people you highly respect. And so I did that, but I also didn't know that maybe I should have been intimidated. And this goes back to, no one in my family ever went to college. Okay. My grandma went to 3rd grade. When I interviewed at college, I thought I was evaluating them if it was someplace I wanted to go. I had no idea they were checking to see if I should be admitted.
Wow.
Like, oops. And so, yeah, I know. I found out when I was a sophomore in college. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Wow. I mean, it never occurred to me. So it might have been ignorance and naivete that somehow drove me to it. But also, so I wasn't intimidated by anyone I met, which was true when I was at IBM. But I think it's partially just the absolute desire to solve the problem. And that when you're really focused on the problem, then you know how that person relates to the problem. So why would you cover stuff that doesn't have anything to do with them? Like sometimes I'll tell them, this is the big goal, but this is what you can do, right? Microsoft, the guy who owned the code for incident response, okay? I needed him to do something that wasn't on his roadmap, to show the troubleshooting guide in his application. I found out that at 3 a.m. when a catastrophe happened, the link to the troubleshooting guide was nowhere to be found. 3 o'clock in the morning, where's the directions? Nowhere to be found. I found out there was a database field in his application that had the troubleshooting guide for every service. Not only that, it was filled in. This was a filled in database field that existed that wasn't shown to everyone. I'm like, I know it's not, but hear me out, right? Yeah. 3 o'clock in the morning, they don't know where to go for the directions. It's filled in, it's in the data. Is there any way? Could you? popped up immediately. Production live site, the big Thursday meeting when we go over a massive failure of the platform and what happened. Thank you for putting the troubleshooting guide in the incident system. I mean, they like people were thanking us in the system that it happened to show up in it, but it's how do you, it was within his power. Everything was right there. But who's going to add something to an application when it's not in the roadmap? They got 300 features on their roadmap. How do you get them to use that power, that magic heart that they have? And that's, you have to, when you go highly logical, I mean, if that was your application, wouldn't you want to help them find the directions of how to rescue the incident if you're the incident response system?
Yeah.
Right? So if you can find that logic trail, always grab that and never tell someone to do something. I need you to, I've never said I need you to do this. Even when I was the CIO and CTO, I've never used, I need you, do this. No. I work with leaders, and leaders are influenced. They're not followers. I can't tell them just to do something, even if they report to me. And so I did get to the point where someone reporting to you or not has absolutely nothing to do with who you're leading.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Especially if you're leading leaders. It's all about, can you influence them? And influencing them is, you have to be very present. If you're on a banana peel all the time, because you're not using time blocks and you're spinning out of control and you're going up and down with the moods of what's going on in your company, then you can't do that. But if instead you focus on being very present on, okay, this is the goal, what I have to get done. This is their dimension to the goal. So what do I need to do? What do I need them to realize? Right? Because at the end of the day, you want to show them that box is bigger than they thought, not that you're outside the box. People do not work outside the box. Everyone goes, oh, think outside the box. Oh, you're outside. No. I show people the box is bigger than they thought. Big difference. Right. Perspective, just like when people say, feedback is the breakfast of champions, ask for advice on how to make it better. Don't ask for feedback. Feedback is disempowering. It's, I'm weak, I don't know, did I do okay?
Right.
Advice is, how could I have done better with that? Same fundamental thing, but the energy is very different in the question.
It is, and one of the things that I've noticed is, I asked you about how do you communicate, but really what I've come to understand is you're really good at listening, and that comes from being present, right? If I'm not listening to what people are saying, to what's going on, to being aware of all the different things, I can't communicate that. Or if I am, I might be communicating the incorrect things to you because I'm not paying attention, I'm not present. I could be the best speaker in the world, but if I don't listen, right? And I said it at one point, right? I've got 2 years, I'm a listener. That's really the fundamental part of this whole thing.
Yes, it's one of the reasons TBW stands for Technical Business Whispers, because the answers are always in the whispers. That's why I say it in every video. It's one of our sayings and slogans. And the reason being is, it's true. It's true. Now, in my case, obviously, I'm referring to whisper reports, conference whispers, but and whisper rankings and whisper studies, but it's also just fundamentally true in transformations and changes. Now, what are they really saying? Right. What are they? And sometimes it's funny. You'll be in a room and you'll say, okay, now, apologies. What you just said, did you mean A or B? And the room says, half yes for A and half yes for B. I'm like, yeah, I thought so. Which is it?
Got it.
And so a lot of those, it's just one of those that but I also have like a strong logic. Like I will know when something's illogical, and even if I can't explain it, I'll vibrate, like, that makes no sense. Can I explain why it makes no sense? With time, let me do a run, get back to you on that. But I have a logic detector. There's a TV show about someone who has a lie detector. I have kind of like that logic detector. There was something like, one of the acquisitions we were going to do, I knew in the beginning, I'm like, this is going to fail because of that, but I think we need to acquire them because of this. A couple $100,000 later, they verified that a partnership wasn't going to work, and the way they were using it wasn't work, but yes, we needed to buy them for completely different reasons. It's like I solved it up front. We had to spend the money and verify it. and for everyone else to see it, but, that's okay.
That's fine.
You can take that route if you'd like.
So I know I've gotten the chance to ask you a lot of questions, shared a lot of good information. I really want to give you now an opportunity to, if there's a question I didn't ask, or if you kind of want to summarize it, or just a parting thought, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about something that you feel is important.
Wow. Didn't prepare for that one. I think the most important thing is you need to believe in yourself and know what your capabilities are and what you really enjoy, and then dial in on those. Like when I look at what I love in life now and what I'm doing and what I enjoy, there's aspects of what I'm doing that I can go all the way back to my childhood. Started running when I was 7 years old. Love it. I loved reading, researching, getting information, analyzing. I loved helping people. I was a tutor, still helping people. Love helping people. I love helping people do their best self and become their best selves. So, but don't be afraid to look back to your youth or younger self and go, now, what is it that I really like out of life? And go, okay, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. And then constantly keep fine-tuning to try to get more of what you want out of life. Don't sit there and reflect back 10 years later and go, oh no, what did I do? So you always want to reflect back on what you're doing, your life, your day, your week. But reflection to some regard is good, but you also want to keep looking forward.
Got it.
And find a way to execute, because IT can be rough. It's not the kindest industry.
It's definitely not.
Full disclosure, it's not. It's definitely not. It's very hardcore.
And I like the way that you kind of frame that. That is definitely something that, as you're saying that, I was thinking back and I'm like, it's true. The things that I enjoy now, there's that common thread. Now it's evolved and there's bits and pieces of it and you learn new things and you're like, okay, now this is great. But there's that common line that
even like, writing. I wrote my first book at 4 and I write a lot now. Even though I'm not technically a writer, I do write.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing, the accomplishments, the challenges, and the things that you've learned out throughout your career. I mean, I've learned immense, right? I thought I had known more about what you have done and just different techniques that you had mentioned, because at one point you told me about the time blocking. Hey, after a certain time, I don't do a lot of this, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. I never thought about this. So I'm excited that we know each other outside of this, and I will get to benefit more from a lot of what you know.
I hope it helps a lot of people. That's important.
Yes, definitely. So with that, everyone, thank you for watching or listening. And again, as always, I really appreciate you taking the time to go through and hopefully learn something from all these different people that I bring in and their different experiences. And with that, continue to plug in and download the knowledge. Thank you.